Packer Nation, happy blinking New Year's. Can someone please pinch me, especially you, Dave, because I feel like I've been dreaming after what just transpired in that whole entire game. Anything that could go right did, and that's exactly what happened in that beatdown against the Minnesota Vikings. But hey, let's go ahead and kick it off with episode 11 of Packers on the Rocks. Happy New Year's, Dave. We don't have some champagne on our hands, but nonetheless, cheers, bud.
Cheers, man. You still able to drink after yesterday?
Hair of the dog. Is that really a thing? Does that work?
I think it does. I was pushing you to do that since like the halftime. Um, yeah, it was a fun game. I was actually catching myself laughing at some of the bounces we were getting during that game. So it was a good way to start 2023.
It was knucking futs, as they'll put it, I think, on The Office. And we'll talk about it here later, but I think the play that summed it up perfectly is Mason Crosby's 56-yard field goal, hits the crossbar and then bounces in, and it's good. And I'm like, this is how this whole entire game has been. The football gods must have had the Packers winning by like 14 points, and the money line was great because I'm like, I can't recall the last time I've seen a Packers game, especially with how this season's been, everything clicking one after the other and the other.
Yeah, we'll get into it, but to that Mason Crosby kick, I was looking at the text message chain we were sending each other before hopping on the show, and I said, why don't you have Ahmed in for a 56-yard kickoff? And immediately after sending that, I said, oh, that's why, with like a smile, like a crying, laughing, like emoji face to it, because I was like, this is just, it bounced straight up and just kind of made it was insane. But we control our own destiny somehow. Like every single game that needed to go our way has won our way. The Browns beat Washington, which basically going to the game today, we knew that if you win the next two, you're in the playoffs. So and then there's just nothing better than a drumming of the Vikings, because the Vikings just chirp nonstop. And so there's just nothing better than shutting them up. And Jair doing gritties in Jefferson's face, and just the whole thing was just almost like an episode of The Office, like you brought up. It was just comical at points.
Honestly, the NFL script writers really did a number on this one. And hey, that's probably a good segue. Speaking of Ja Island and all this chirping, saying that week one was a fluke, and I'm like, oh, come on, Ja. What are you getting yourself into? Because we know Justin Jefferson's going to get his more often than not. We just have to contain him. We can't stop him. But that's a good segue to start off with this defensive unit, where I'm just going to make a real quick shout out to a Packer player that retired as a Packer this past week, and Clinton Dix. And it felt very apropos to have him retire as a Packer. And by the way, Mon Green and Gilbert Brown were doing this podcast talking about how Packer players, every single time they leave, they always come back and retire as a Packer, because who wants to retire as a Viking or a Commander or Redskin or anything else? But very apropos with Clinton Dix coming back home to 1265, and our safeties, which have been a weak link along with other position groups this season long. They have not one, not two, but three Oskies on the day, and one of them went all the way to the house.
Yeah, you're wearing 21 I got 21 Woodson, because when he was in town, it was a very opportunistic defense. So we've been bringing that to the party the last couple of games. It's 12 turnovers in 3 games or something like that. So
it's wild.
Yeah, they're getting hot. And I think, I have a question for you. Are you in the camp of defensive side of the ball needs more confidence than any other like phase of the game? Like it's all about like swagger on defense to kind of like perform, or are you more like X's and O's talent kind of gets you across? Because I think there is something to momentum and swagger, and just the game plan of sticking Ja on Jefferson, said go follow him. I think you let the rest of the 10 guys do their job, I think was the tone setter for this game.
To answer your question, I think you could probably guess it. I mean, halfway, from halftime on, you're like, you're going to grab a drink. And I'm like, I'm really superstitious about this game. I don't want to start now and end up changing something up. And you only do that for your golf game. We'll get a Packers on the Rocks episode with that here later in 2023. I am in the camp of just like superstitious stuff, which it's not real. I mean, it's not tangible. You can't grab onto it. Momentum, very similar to that. You can't grab onto it. It's not a physical thing, but it's sure as hell real. So yes, you need Jimmys and Joes more so than X's and O's. I could just tell with and you brought it up on the prep call, that goal line stand really set the tone for this game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a huge advocate and believer in momentum, and you could tell from the jump when they had that goal line stand, I'm like, all right, the defense brought it and they were ready to play today.
Yeah, I'm team momentum. Like I can actually feel it. Like no matter if it's like if I'm doing something or if I'm actually watching it, you can feel the energy of the crowd. And that goal line stand was massive. And then you have Keyshawn just run it back immediately after, and it's like game on. Like, okay, that's been my boy. That's been my like horse for the last 4 or 5 weeks. Okay, tone setter. Kenny brought his game. January Kenny, December Kenny, like still showing up. Now you got Savage playing with confidence, and just that whole like Rasul, I thought had a great game. Rasul was breaking up passes, or he was showing the this close sign of jumping routes, and the one, like, if you want to get nitpicky with it, I thought that the back end was holding up really well. And I just thought there's a couple of times that we needed to get to Kirk faster with their offensive line. I thought he still had some time to make things happen, or we're just overrunning angles, and he had a couple of long scampers. But defense was kind of the saving grace for this game. Defense was like, we're going to hold up our bargain of the deal like it was the 49ers game. The rest of your boys better pile on and actually get on with it this time.
You're right. They were absolute gangbusters from kickoff up, and I mean, even the end of the game, we had our scrubs in there. I can't believe we gave up 2 touchdowns there in mop up time. I'm still pretty livid about it, but I mean, yeah, from the jump, and it goes back to momentum too. Yeah, Rasul balled out. I even think Quay Walker. I've been watching him like post plays. I just want to see how he handles himself, his mannerisms. A lot of games I've seen it where if we get a turnover, which, week 1 through 10, it was few and far between. Yeah. He didn't really celebrate all too much. He went like off to the sidelines. He wasn't really getting into it with Ja and Preston and everybody else and Kenny. I've noticed these last 2 games, there's not only, it feels like things are starting to click more so for him, but he's playing faster. I'm seeing him celebrate. Also saw him like pull a WWE move and body slam one of the Viking players on the ground. But
to mention you're like getting after it with like teammates with Walker and like starting to feel yourself, him and Rudy Ford did the WWE on someone, and instead of being like head down, like kind of disgruntled about it, him and Rudy Ford were having a laugh over it. Like, oh, like stuff like that happens. Don't worry about it, man. Keep your head up, young buck. But he's playing with instinct. Hollins, I think, has been coming along a little bit.
TJ Slayton with the deflection
he had the career game. I mean, he had 2 pass deflections. He had a couple of tackles for losses. He had a couple of pressures. You can, like we were talking last week, you can argue that Lowry out of the rotation actually helps the defense, because I thought Wyatt actually held up well. But yeah, I mean, we kicked their ass in all 3 phases. I mean, they missed a couple of field goals. They had the touchdown return against them. Mason was 4 for 4 and actually somehow miraculously making it into the end zone for touchbacks. So in a cold January game. So yeah, and Rodgers was kind of game manager Rodgers. I mean, you look at his stat sheet and you think, oh man, he had a terrible game, but that's kind of all they needed him to do was run through Aaron Jones, pick up some crucial 3rd downs, and just cruise on.
Before moving on to the offense, and them in that phase doing just enough. One last thing to touch upon here with the defense, and yeah, Kirk ended up scrambling a couple of times. I'm like, come on, you gotta keep him in the pocket. How are we gonna let him, pick up a 3rd and 11 like I was texting you about. I just don't understand how week 1 all the way up until recently, Jair's playing this soft zone, and now finally he gets his way. And I think it starts with that. They let Jair play Jair ball, and he's pressing Justin Jefferson. He even gives them a couple jams at the line of scrimmage that throws him off. I'd have to say, besides the goal line stand, I think it starts with him, his confidence that he has, and backing it up on the field. If anything, I was going to halfway through the game, I'm like, he did the gritty. I wonder if Dave's going to do the gritty on the Packers on the Rocks episode. What will it take to get Dave do a Jair gritty?
Well,
even Tanyan had a gritty touchdown celebration. I'm like, do they know they were going to come out doing this well? Because they had their celebrations ripped and ready to go.
The only thing better than me doing the gritty on this show would be if Rodgers scored the touchdown on the run and throws down the belt and does the gritty in that end zone. But Jair, I mean, we touched on him earlier, but he had a couple of jabs that put Jefferson on his knees right at the beginning of the line of scrimmage. So, yes, it starts and ends with Jair. And going forward, the game plan on defense should be Jair, shadow your best wide receiver, and the other 10 guys will do their responsibility. Like, it should be no more soft zone. Jair, let's cover the 3rd wide receiver who's out on the boundary to take you out of the play. It should be Jair, go against their best. Like, you're paying him to go against the best, go against the best.
So many of these no-brainer type decisions that should have been going on from day one, but it doesn't happen.
It's upper Wisconsin. It takes a little bit of time to adjust. We're always a little bit behind the curve, and then takes about 12 weeks to get into it. Back against the wall. I still
don't even know if they've turned their clocks forward or backwards from daylight savings time. Probably. Yeah, I was gonna say.
I wish I was a fly on the wall in that meeting, saying who came into the office this week and said, "Hey guys, I got a great idea. We're gonna put Jair against Jefferson."
Speaking of coming into the office and moving into like the special teams, we were texting about this as well. We're like, hey, somebody tell LaFleur that starting after halftime, pull Mason off of kickoff duty and get Ahmed. What's his last name?
Ramad Ahmed. Ahmed is his last name. It's Ramad Ahmed.
There we go. Some guy who stole Devontae Adams' jersey and put it on. But yeah, speaking of going into the office and talk, hey, we got to send a message. And you're like, I don't understand that we activated him. What went on? And sure enough, you got your answer. Somebody asked it in the press conference about why you have someone out there and he's not kicking the 56-yarder. And LaFleur's like, I saw Mason trot out there. We were going to do a Hail Mary pass. And Mason's out there strutting his stuff, carrying his big marbles to the middle of the field.
Yeah, he apparently he went out with a quad in pregame. We were kind of talking about it because I think like the Packers safety on the practice squad, Abernathy got picked off by the Falcons this week, so they brought a mid, and so we were talking about it, and I was like, oh well, maybe it's just so he doesn't get poached on from the practice squad, because going into it, I thought he was just going to handle kickoffs, but he got hurt, so apparently they just had to roll with Crosby.
Well, I know what's funny. My brother-in-law said this. We'll bring him on the show one of these episodes. He's somewhat of a Packer transplant. I don't think he was a Packer fan from day one, but he's became one and super knowledgeable. I think he's one of our 17 subscribers at this point.
Shout out to all of you.
He made a funny comment that he mentioned to me. He's like, yeah, that kick by Crosby, it's like a golf swing. He knew that it was going to take 143.5 rotations to the bar to get it to continue to go over, then pulling like a double doink for the Bears and heading the opposite direction.
It's like it gets off, just right off the club face. Oh, just get over the bunker, please. And then it just hits the lip and bounces on the green. Thank you.
It's wild.
But I thought special teams that's why we're kind of going this second, was a massive phase of this game. We clearly won special teams with their missed kicks, with our made kicks, field position. I think even like the balls on Nixon on that punt that hits the ground, he scoops it up. Like if you're anyone else besides Nixon, I think you're saying stay away from that. But he picked up another 8, 9, 10 yards off the bounce on the punt that one time. Cobb,
Even LaFleur said in his press conference, he's like, I was shocked that he didn't bring the ball out after halftime when we got it. I've never heard that sort of remark before.
I was too when he let him go. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, when's the last time that you can remember that we scored in all 3 phases of the game in one game?
It did remind me of the 2014 game against the Philadelphia Eagles when Julius Peppers had a pick 6 in that game. That was also another one that we routed them. Like we put up a 40 burger and everything seemed to go right. Hyde had a punt return for a touchdown. Julius Peppers had a pick 6. Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson went off that game. So I have to say that may be the last time it's happened.
I'm like, okay, so Cobb had a good return. Like, okay, like once again going back to nitpicking. And I kind of get the strategy, but Cobb has also in the last like 2 years been muffing stuff. So I don't understand they're at their own 40, they're gonna pin us back at the 10. Like, let's take Nixon off. Like, just keep Nixon on. Like, okay. He can be the judge if he wants to let it go. If he wants to field at the 5 and turn it up, like I have no problem with that either.
Shit, he can return it from the end zone for all I care. I mean, he's the best Packers returner since Desmond Howard. And I thought there's no way. And Jair's like, oh, you can't get a nickname until you take one to the house. It's like, all right, well, he was listening. He said he felt like a Ferrari before the game. I think maybe we'd nickname him the Ferrari. We'll see. And he said the hardest part about that whole entire kick return for a touchdown was just beating the kicker. I wish they had a different camera angle on it. It did not help my hangover by any means watching him run like towards the screen at me. And I'm like, I can't really tell how this is blocked up right now.
It was very weird. Bizarre. It was like they couldn't rotate over fast enough for him. Like they started on the overhead, like camera down the chute. And then he got through it so fast because it was just a massive alley. It was as big as my house. And just like, okay, like I guess we gotta switch over now, even though he's already at the 15-yard line.
If you want to be nitpicky, we can nitpick about the blocked punt. There's so many things that happened in this game that I forgot after a while. Nixon returned a kick. Levitt let somebody just steamroll him over to get a blocked punt. Like, we're gonna be nitpicky and talk about some.
Kudos to Levitt though, because he downs it at the 1 and he saved us 4 points. And then that just the stand there. So kudos to him for just being like, okay, I got steamrolled, but I'm going to jump on the ball here.
Kudos. Anything else about teams before we move on to the weakest phase of the 3, which is also, so it feels surprising even just to say that the offense didn't really have to do all too much to get the jet. They were up, they had fronted 14-3 and barely moved the ball.
Yeah. How do you kind of comprehend that? You put up 41 points and you think the offense just kind of meandered.
It's hard to put into words, Dave.
We'll try.
How does it happen? Like the one thing I
watched the game. I know how it happened.
Yeah. One thing that I thought of during the game, I remember LaFleur brought up a couple weeks ago that he didn't want to run up the scoreboard on his buddy McVay. And at the time we kind of needed it. If it comes down to point and the tiebreaker between the Lions, we don't need it now. But he's like, I don't want to pour it on. There's karma that comes along with it. In this game, though, and we were talking back and forth. I'm like, dude, pull your starters in the beginning of the fourth quarter. But he kept him in. Hey, we're not only gonna get to a 30 burger, but we're gonna get to a 40 burger as well. How do you explain that? That's how I'm putting into words our 40 burger. Well, I'm like, I thought LaFleur cares about feelings too much.
Only when it comes to his friends, man. Have you noticed that LaFleur goes easy on his friends, where most of our losses are through his friends?
That is a really good take.
But
Robert Saleh calling him soft, but
yeah, I'll call you soft next show, Jordan. Yeah, it was kind of like when you gotta have it. We made it on third down. I think that's kind of like Lazard showed up on third down. Cobb on that bizarre, like 10-man on the field. Like, are they going to call like, and Rodgers was just on that play specifically was just letting the play clock melt down. I'm like, they've been saying it 10 times now. They have 10 men on the field. Just snap the ball and let one rip. Cobb got a big one. Lazard, I mentioned a couple times. I mean, Rodgers had good pocket awareness, like the one to Tunyon where he steps up, then steps back, and then lets one rip. But then there was just I think more than anything, I was confused with the play calling. They saw something clearly on film where they wanted to go outside toss that just was not working. Like it would work with Aaron Jones, then they'd throw Aaron Jones out, and it'd be AJ Dillon, and AJ Dillon would just get manhandled in those situations.
What was it? Our first 3-and-out that I think the play calling there was kind of suspect there. Or maybe we picked up a first down.
There's that one.
And I tell you, I think teams are finally catching on to our outside run plays. That's been like a sweet spot, bread and butter play all season long. Miami did a really good job of stopping it last week. And I thought if it's not Aaron Jones, which he's quick enough to get around the end, those pitch plays to AJ Dillon didn't really go for much.
Yeah, that was weird. We had a couple of shot plays to Watson. Rodgers was like 0 for 4 or 5 on shot plays.
That movement that Rodgers had in the pocket and that Tunyon throw, that's some of the best footwork I think that you'll ever see for a craftsman and somebody at their sport. That looked like some Messi, which I don't watch soccer, but people talk about Messi's footwork and what he has. But those are just little subtle moves he makes in the pocket, and that toss to Tunyon, I'm like, that reminded me of the Cowboys game and his second touchdown to Watson. And how wide open Tunyon was. I'm like, I haven't seen Tunyon catch a ball like that wide open since he had 12 touchdowns a couple seasons ago.
He's kind of the forgotten guy. He's in the route, he just gets lost in the shuffle. And Rodgers with that step up and step back move completely reset the pocket because it was closing in on him. And then all of a sudden he had like 4 or 5 yards to work with again. It's like, okay, great. But a lot of the stuff, they just make too hard on themselves. Like me and you were on that 2nd and 1 that stalled out. It was 2nd and 1, and they do outside pitch to Dillon, just misses Z, and then he gets trapped. And then I think they ran a pass play right after that Rodgers incompleted. And I was just like, why don't you just do like Dillon and Jones in the backfield together and hand it to a back, or just if you want, just go single back with Dillon and go for like some of this stuff. Like I even texted you like 70% of the plays I didn't agree with. Like I thought the offense stalled out a lot. I think we could have probably put up over 50 points today if the offense was actually in good shape.
I'm at least happy though to give them some saving grace, because I feel like I'm usually the one that's more pessimistic on this show, where I want to rip players or coaches or units apart. I think we did a really good job though of committing to the ground game, where I was concerned at certain points in the game where something really good happened. I'm like, now I know LaFleur and Rodgers are going to want to do this air raid offense and just start spraying it all over the yard, where there's questionable play calls and getting cute with it. But I thought they did a really good job of, at this point, they recognize what our identity is and what we're really good at, and when we're finally committing to it.
Like the way the game was unfolding, like even 7-3 at that point, like the way our offense was cooking and knowing how the Vikings have notoriously this year come back from everything, I was still quite uncomfortable, just because I was like, man, it really seems like it's a slugfest for both offenses at this point. Like no one could really get anything going. So if they actually find something that works against our defense, it might be tough. But then once it was happening, it was like 27-3. I was like, okay, I could kind of lay back and have a couple more cocktails here. But I think somewhat they found what works with the swing passes to Jones and they did a great job, just Jones period, this game, of just, okay, this is going to be a Jones game. But outside of that, I mean, there's still definitely meat on the bone that they left kind of off it. I mean, they could have done some play action to Big Dog or to the tight ends in general, or if they saw that the Watson deep stuff wasn't working, I would have preferred them to try to go underneath to Watson or try to give him on a crosser, or that quick strike stuff that was working last week to Dobbs. They never even utilized that stuff. Like there's plenty of tools in their bags that sometimes they just forget about.
I think they knew they had the game in hand. I felt as though we had the game in hand. Yes, I was slightly concerned even at the at halftime when I heard that they were down 33-0 against the Colts and they somehow pulled off a miracle. Starting to really feel like the NFL is fixed. But when Justin Jefferson almost decapitated a ref with his helmet and almost made the guy go completely concussed and giving him CTE. That's when I had a good feeling. It reminded me of the Rams game when Aaron Donald lost his cool and he was super frustrated, where I'm like, they can do it, but there's so many things that have happened in this game. I don't think there's, anything the Vikings can do to be able to pull themselves out of that hole.
So switching off to we'll kind of do a little what's up ahead. So the Vikings play the Bears. We play the Lions. We now control our own destiny, so it's at Lambeau. The game has not been announced of what time it is. They could be anywhere between noon, 3:25, or Sunday Night Football. I think I'm leaning towards it's going to be Sunday Night Football because if the Lions win and the Seahawks win, or if the Lions win and the Seahawks lose, the Lions are in. If we just win, we're in. And I forget who the 49ers are playing, but there could be a very realistic shot that if the Niners somehow lose, the Vikings win and we win, we're back in Minnesota the week after.
And this reminds me of somewhat 2003, the Randy Moss mooning to the crowd. That was the rubber match of that season, where that one is different. We went 2-0 in the regular season and they knocked us off in that wild card round. But yeah, if or when we beat the not same old Lions next week, I could very well see us having a rematch up in Minnesota against them.
Wasn't there one, I think it was 2009, Vikings and Packers rematched each other. That was like the Joe Webb game, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So that season, I want to say was, we'll have to come back to it because my steel trap of a memory in this hangover.
I thought it was 2009, but I don't know. But I would.
09 was Cardinals playoff game.
Oh, my bad. It's not 2009 because that was the wild card.
I want to say it's 2012 because we went divisional round.
Yeah,
we got ran over by Kaepernick and still have hauntings from that game. And the game before it, which Charles Woodson came back from like a 9-week shoulder injury, and it was Josh Webb, and we cuddled up AP in the backfield. But yeah, it was that sort of. But hey, we're maybe getting ahead of ourselves. We need to beat the Lions first.
We just got to beat the Lions. We got to beat the Lions and we're in, and then it'll be, hey, I don't care if it's whoever it is, 49ers, Vikings, whoever sneaks in there, we're in the dance. I mean, we were 4-8 and talking about, oh man, why does Jordan Love come in, to now where it's like, oh, we're the hot team. Like and we're the hot team without Rodgers being hot.
I still can't like wrap my head around it. A few weeks ago, we were 3% to make the playoffs, or like 0.5% at one point, and everything's going our way. I'm like, the way that the Packers playoff heartbreak works and things are riding too well, something seems to disrupt it. I thought the Cowboys game was our Super Bowl type win.
What you don't understand, Jordan, is we needed a regular season heartbreak this year so we can avoid postseason heartbreak this year.
I hope you're right. And Aaron Rodgers has been controlling the script this whole entire time and playing mediocre football to then come playoff time. He's finally going to amp it up and turn it on and be like, hey, I figured that I'd ride off in the sunset, making it to the Super Bowl and having one of the craziest storylines of an NFL season that you could possibly think of. About the game though, in Jair's playing bump and run against Justin Jefferson. The Lions have some weapons now. They have Amon-Ra, St. Brown, the EQ, the scrub, his brother, which has went over 1,000 yards this season. They just got that first round pick from Bama, and I want to say Jameson Williams.
Harrison.
Back. What's his name?
Williams. Jameson Williams. Yes.
Yeah, back from injury. There's too many very like generic names where it's hard to keep track of them, and so many players come out of Bama. Would you say then, hey, we let Jair play bump and run again, press against Amon-Ra or maybe Shadow Williams? I don't know how much damage he's done. The Lions are 1-6 not too long ago as well.
We're gonna play a 12-yard cushion with shell and just hope and pray that it works. No, I think Probably Brown. He probably somewhat shadows him a little bit, but I don't think it's the same as a Jefferson. I don't think it's like we specifically have to take this person away because Goff's been kind of spreading around a little bit. I mean, I think if our front holds up with the run game, like it did today, I think we're in good shape.
Play more three. And I want to say this game against the Vikings, we played more 3 down linemen with Slayton and Reed and Clark or Wyatt mixed in there as well. Continue to play that. Get after Goff. He's similar to Quirk, where you start to put pressure on him. He'll give you a couple of gifts.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And let play Quay free and blitz him like we did today. And I feel pretty good about our chances. I would say this game is going to be much more of a slugfest than this anomaly of a game that we had against the Vikings. But who knows, though? We have now officially caught fire.
It's more of like a potential for a track meet because of just the Lions defense being atrocious and the Lions offense being phenomenal. Like it's kind of like that way. But I think if we can kind of bring that same energy that we brought this week to the Lions game, we're more likely to see kind of offensive fireworks because the Lions defense is not up to snuff at all. So
as long as we don't throw Hutchison, their defensive end for Michigan, another pick. Maybe we redeem ourselves and throw in Bakhtiari, another end zone pass to give him his one only touchdown. The guy could barely even lift 20 pounds, which we didn't even get to this. Barely lift 20 pounds a couple weeks ago. Now he's playing left tackle again, playing well. Z didn't show off his shirt with whatever message he had ready for the Green Bay community. We do have about a minute left though.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you win, we're in, and we're gonna have plenty of cocktails next week, and maybe I'll pop open a celebratory bottle for this show if we somehow sneak in. I mean, who would have thought 9-8 gets us?
Do you have any bourbon brands that you want to shout out right now, or what you're drinking today, which we can make a nice plug for here in the socials?
Right now I'm chilling on some Jamaican rum, courtesy of the in-laws. But next week I'll pop open a bottle. I'll show the actual bottle.
Okay, we'll have something ready. And hey, to your point earlier, I'll make sure to get in a little agua here post show.
There you go. Yeah. Just rest up, recovery, plenty of water, drink some Pedialyte like Rogers at the presser.
Perfect. Maybe even some of that purple drink that he likes, the Fanta one.
Man, Happy New Year. Everyone out there, take it easy. Have a